As always, if you enjoyed today's video, please consider subscribing. Some of the things that we're going to talk about today are going to come easier to some of you than others. It might even seem a little bit obvious, while to others it's going to be a little harder to grasp, and that's okay. But let's talk about why that difference is going to occur. In an old Core gaming video, Gerald brought up Laugh's theory, a theory created by Evo champion and Itoki Omni fight sit creator Ryan On, also known as Laugh. Laugh stated that there are three types of players in his opinion: the brain, the heart, and the body-based. The brain-based player is a lab rat. This is a person who studies a lot of frame data, hitboxes, and other raw data. It's very important to them, and they're always in training mode trying to find the best way to punish, the best way to optimize, and the best way to act in certain situations. But that's also sort of leads to their downfall, right? Because you can't always predict every single situation in a fighting game. A heart-based player enjoys mind games, baiting, conditioning their opponent, and making reads. They play a lot on instinct rather than hard facts sometimes. And these are the people who I think are going to pick up on this topic today a lot faster than others. Then there's body-based players. I consider myself a body-based player, and this is just a person who excels at reactions, executions, hit confirms, etc., right? Very straightforward, and probably the easiest to interpret out of all of them. Now, they all have their downfalls, they all have their downsides, and I'll link the Core Gaming video down below if you want to see a little bit more about Laugh's theory. But today, let's get into our topic of reading your opponent, learning how to read your opponent as a beginner, and some things to look for, right? Some key points that you should look for when trying to read your opponent, looking at their habits and things like that. So I have some questions here that you can ask yourself while playing neutral that I got from Infectious's video, and I'll go ahead and link that down below. And in that video, he talks about a couple of different things, but the one thing that really stuck with me was what to look for when you're trying to read your opponent or to gauge their habits. And those four questions were: when your opponent blocks a button, what do they do? When your opponent presses a button, what do they do? When they block a string, what do they do? And where do they like to press buttons? So let's go ahead and break these down one by one. So here I've got Ken set to just do stand roundhouse, right? I'm going to block it. And see how I'm blocking it, and then I'm continuously blocking. I'm not punishing it, even though it's -4. What does that tell the Ken player? If you're the Ken player in this situation, and I'm blocking a -4 move point blank and not punishing it, that tells you that I don't know the matchup, or I don't at least know that that's -4. So to you, you can abuse that. You can abuse that information and use it. And this is powerful for special moves as well, right? A lot of people can't punish Karin's V trigger a lot of the time. Let me go ahead and show you that. A lot of people aren't punishing this because they're afraid of the follow-up. But you can jab after. This part's -6, and then you pick a follow-up. But you can jab and interrupt that. But to me, as a Karin player, if I'm using it and you're not punishing it or you're not pressing afterwards, at least jabbing me out, I know that I'm getting a free follow-up. And maybe you do know how to punish the follow-up, but Karin has like 3 or 4 of them, so I could pick a relatively safe one, like maybe the overhead, or maybe I could pick like the command grab or something, right? It doesn't always have to be the slide, because everybody knows how to punish the slide, but not everybody's ready for this one, right? The -2 overhead. All right, let's talk about when your opponent presses a button, what do they do? So for this, I'm going to use one of my own downfalls, right? On wake up, a lot of the time, I like to do meaty stand light kick, this move right here. So when the opponent's getting up, I want to do meaty stand light kick and maybe get a counter hit into, you know, the conversion. But lately, what I've been catching myself doing is stand light kick into stand light kick, which is okay because you're trying to make your opponent guess, right, after the first stand light kick, whether you're going to press another button or whether you're going to throw, right? Because Karin's stand light kick is going to leave her right in range to throw. So their guess here is, okay, I blocked the stand light kick. Is he going to go low? Is he going to press another button? Or is he going to throw me? But in my case, I've been autopiloting to just do 2 stand light kicks, and now I'm out of range to throw. So now my opponent knows that they don't need to even worry about the throw as an option because I'm, you know, taking that option away myself. Now, let's say against somebody like Ryu, right? This happened to me in a ranked game, and I was playing in Discord, and my friends sort of told me his patterns, right? They were like, every time he's going to press a heavy button, he's pressing a lot of big buttons. That was his thing. He loved this button, and he loved this button a lot, and solar plexus. So every time he pressed a heavy button, it was always followed by another one into a fireball or a jump. That's it. That was his entire game plan, was either one of the heavy buttons or solar plexus, and then a fireball would always come out, or a jump would come out. So I know, now that I know what he's doing after he presses a button, I know what to look for. I can eliminate some other things that are on my mental stack and focus on that approach option. And that's what makes paying attention to what your opponent's doing after they press a normal so important. All right, so next let's talk about when they block a block string, what do they do, right? So what you can look for here is if you're getting a lot of counter hits, if they're delay jabbing, or if they're trying to jab in between your block string, that's a tight block string, and that's why you're getting the counter hit, right? Because then that tells you that they don't know that what you're doing is a block string. They can't figure it out. So let's try it on Ryu here. See how I got a counter hit there on that block string because he jabbed? And maybe he does know that that is a block string and he just happened to jab, but just assume that he doesn't and then try it again. And then, you know, obviously if he blocks it, then you know that's information. So when they block a string, if you hit them, look for the counter hit, or you can also look for their movement options. If they're getting caught in block strings that they don't want to hold and they don't know if they're interruptible, maybe they'll start backdashing or maybe they'll start jumping back and then you'll get a lot of air resets and you'll realize it. And then maybe you'll start making adjustments, right? Like a lot of Geef players, if you start backdashing on wake up to avoid SPD, they'll do stand heavy kick, crush counter you, and then they'll get air SPD. On Karin, if you're doing a block string and you notice somebody's backdashing a lot, maybe throw out like a low forward and it'll catch them backdashing. Next, let's talk about where do they like to press buttons. And this, to me, meant like what spacing do they like to press buttons. Sometimes this can mean like, you know, what situations do they like to press buttons, but let's interpret it as what ranges, right? So let's say I'm standing here and I'm pressing a lot of stand heavy kick. It's a far button, slow startup, but Ryu's just blocking it. Now what can the Ryu player do here if I'm just, you know, constantly adjusting my spacing and trying to hit this button? What he can do is match that, right? If I'm walking forward a little bit, maybe he walks back a tiny bit. So I'm going to adjust Karin here, but this is what the Ryu player would do. And then it whiffs, right? He's going to walk back a tiny bit, and then Karin's thing is going to whiff, and he's going to whiff punish that. Now, that's a little easier than maybe something like this, right? Something like this. Karin's stay medium kick. You'll notice that when I get into range, I like to press this button a lot. It's a pretty good poke, and it's relatively safe. But you can get stuffed for this, right? The startup of it can get stuffed, as well as it can get whiff punished, right? It's just a very hard button to whiff punish, but you can do it, right? So if I'm constantly hitting this, right, constantly readjusting my spacing, trying to hit him, what he can do is just back up a little bit again and then whiff punish it, right? Now, that isn't something I would rely on, obviously, because it is a very hard button to whiff punish. But what you can rely on pretty well is trying to stuff it if they're doing it really close to you. You can always stick out like a 3-frame or something and try and stuff the startup of this. Like I said, I'm going to link the 2 videos down below. The Laughs Theory one, if that one is one that you're interested in, and then the one where Infectious talks about this in a little bit less detail, but I think he puts it a little bit more eloquently. So I'll put that in the description down below as well. If you did enjoy today's video or any of the ones that you've seen here in the past, please do consider subscribing, and I'll talk to you again tomorrow.